Alrighty, what's going on, everybody? I'm back with another podcast. Today we're having on Eddie Smith again. Today we're going to be talking about the George Floyd, the riots going on, riots, quote unquote, and then we'll talk about um, racism in America as a whole. But with that being said, I'll let Eddie I think you probably know a little bit more about the situation. So if just in case somebody's been living under a rock and doesn't know what happened, um, you can talk about that, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, I guess I'll just explain it from the beginning. As far as I know, is that George Floyd was charged with using a $20 or 20 counterfeit $20 bill, which they don't even know if it was counterfeit, and they're pretty sure he didn't even know he was using a counterfeit bill. So basically, a cop showed up and handcuffed him, and there's a video got released of a cop like kneeling on his neck till he's lifeless. The videos, I don't know if you watched it. It's pretty hard to watch. The
Yeah.
bystanders are like, "This man's non-responsive. What are you doing?" And the cop just sits there with his knee on his neck and until that eventually George Floyd's lifeless. I don't know. I've had arguments with people who tell me um, that the cop actually didn't kill him. So there's literally an 8-minute video, and you can watch the life draining out of this man. They're like, no, it was the intoxicants in his system or whatever. Like, okay, you get drunk and then I'm gonna choke you to death, and then I'll be like, nope, it wasn't. I didn't choke him to death. It was the alcohol. Like,
Yeah.
so crazy how even when there's a video of the life draining out of this man, you still have people who'll be like, nope, wasn't. The cop didn't do it. Like you the mental gymnastics and stuff you can trick yourself into thinking to believe your own narrative is insane.
Yeah. And also, I saw this picture of the cop, like his record or like his past, and I'm pretty sure he's killed like 3 or 4 other people in the past, like people of color, but they
Yeah.
just never like did it. It was like apparently it was justified or something, so they never did anything about it. And also with that, after one of the people that he killed, and I could be wrong, maybe he didn't kill him, but like he like beat the shit out of him or something, but one of the people sued him or something, and somehow or another, Amy Klobuchar was I think she was the district attorney of Minnesota, so she didn't prosecute him or something.
That's right.
So that just shows the like the MLK saying, that it's not the KKK member or the white or racist that's like the problem. It's the white moderate that stands there idly and just watches everything happen.
Yeah, I saw a meme. It was sad, but also funny. It was the cop, Derek Chauvin, kneeling on the guy's neck, and it says U.S. Republican Party. And then there's the cop just standing there watching him do it, doing nothing. They're like U.S. Democratic Party. Like,
Yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah,
Like, the blatant racism versus like the moderate bystander who's like, oh, well, how about we have some peaceful protests, or.
yeah, yeah. So I see a lot of people saying, why couldn't they do it peacefully? I think that there are a lot. I think the news likes to show the non-peaceful protests because that's clicks, that's views.
Right.
I think there are a lot of peaceful protests going on, but at the same time, in your opinion, is it a little bit justified to have a little bit of non-peaceful protest going on?
I mean, I wish it was more organized. Like, I've seen people get hurt who have nothing to do with it, and obviously, like, that's a bummer. And the history of race riots in America, technically, usually not that much comes from it, other than it's in the news cycle for a little while and it's in the public consciousness. I mean, I wish there was more organization to it, right? So I wish that they were targeting only the corporations and the police departments. Like, they trashed the police department and like overran it, which is cool. It shows like if we band together and we take stuff over, we can demand whatever we want. But then there's also like Chinatown was getting looted, which is mostly like immigrant small businesses, which is like not the enemy here. But then I do think it makes sense that people are looting Target. So these people are in a terrible economic situation. So then when everything pops off, the first thing they do is run to this giant billion-dollar corporation in the middle of their community and they start looting it. And I think that's okay. I think that's redistribution of wealth that should happen anyways on a small scale, obviously. And I think it's a way to get attention because, like you said,
There you go.
you don't pay attention to the peaceful protests,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is that when it comes down to it, the only way people listen is if their money's being affected. And
Yeah.
if Target's money's being affected, I mean, you see a lot of people. It's like kind of analogous with the whole what is it called? The workers or whatever, the essential workers. When people would put out ads, thanking the essential workers, but they still pay them $7.25 an hour. So it's like it's just like it's lip service. But yeah.
Right. Until you threaten their capital, in a capitalist society, you have to threaten capital if you want real change,
Yeah. I saw this thing, and it showed Michael Vick served more time in prison. Obviously what he did was fucked up, but like he served more time in prison than the last 439 cops who killed black people who are unarmed, like combined.
I mean, I think that gets to something like everyone always jumps to, well, not all cops are bad. And it's like, yeah, I know cops who are like nice people, but this institution is set up to prosecute black communities mostly for nonviolent drug offenses, and they're militarized. So like 9 out of 10 police arrests are for nonviolent offenses, just like bureaucratic things. And then you have these police who are militarized, and like you saw with the UPS driver who got killed a while back, like some of them think they're in like an action movie, they're like, they love having that gun and the vest and stuff. And we got to look at how that institution is used. Because a lot of people say the system's broken, right? But is the system broken, or is it designed like this? Is the provision in the 13th Amendment that says slavery is illegal except for prison labor, and then the private prisons all the prisons are private, and they are some of the top lobbyists of politicians. It's like, no, I think the system's designed to work this way, and police are enforcing that kind of it's a little bit white supremacist because there is the racial element, but it's mostly poor, right? They're just prosecuting poor people, and black people are more likely to get shot and killed and more likely to get profiled by police, so there's the racial element. But ultimately, if you get hit with financial crimes, you get a slap on the wrist, if you get caught price fixing or something, which affects a huge amount of people. But if you get caught with a gram of weed, you got a cop arrest, handcuffing you, holding a gun to you. So yeah, we got to look at how that institution's used. And if you're against the riots, if you think these riots are terrible, okay, change the way that the police force works, and then bring these black communities out of poverty. Bam, no riots. There you go. But until you fix the socioeconomic conditions, you're going to keep having riots. I mean, it's been this way since the early, forever in America.
Yeah, and I mean, you're exactly right that the system it's set up to be racist, and it's set up to arrest poor people for profit. I mean, that's I mean, I can't remember. There was a quote about somebody after they ended slavery. They're like, yeah, we ended illegal slavery, right? But we're gonna put these people in prison, so it's just a new form of slavery. And also the drug war. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. But you could talk about how the quote from Nixon, who started the drug war. It's like he said, we can't make the hippies not protest the war. We can't make black people not riot for rights, but we can throw them in jail if they smoke weed. So let's make that illegal. So the entire thing is set up to completely undermine these people.
Yeah, it's so transparent. Like, obviously it's not reported on by mainstream news because they're also profiting from the system. So CNN and MSNBC aren't going to do pieces on, the failure of the drug war, But yeah, I mean, it's so transparent. If you look at the Nixon quotes, like if you look at the 13th Amendment, which says slavery is illegal other than prison labor, and then 25% of the world's prison population is here in the U.S., land of the free, unless you want to marry a dude, another person of the same sex, or smoke a joint, then you're going to, not now we have gay marriage. We're claiming we're the land of the free, and then we're not allowing people to get married to who they want, and we're throwing them in jail for altering their consciousness with a drug, which of course doesn't work. The lowest drug rates in the world are Portugal, where they've made drugs, they've decriminalized completely, and they just do rehabilitation rather than focusing on it as a criminal issue. And that's how the cops are just an arm of the state. And people, Republicans claim they don't want big government, right? Well, the cops arresting you for weed is huge government. And we're seeing the effect that has, especially on black communities, which is why you have riots now.
Yeah, 100%. I just made that point the other day on Twitter. Somebody said something like, it's a conservative tweeted out like, how do you guys feel about these riots? I was like, you guys should be rioting with them, because I thought you guys hated big government. Like that's literally the state. That's literally state sponsored murder that just happened, and you're literally fine with it. And there's also the people that are like, they're always like, the murder was horrible, but it's like, no, how about just no, the murder was horrible and let's do something about it.
Right. That's yeah. And everyone's so reactionary. There's nobody wants to look at the larger issues. Be like, all right, so black people have been left behind by the economy, and the police force has been used to beat them down for years, which is, what's resulted in violent riots. And you can look at that historically. That's always what's happened. If you oppress a group, they're gonna act up. But people just want to be like, oh, I make the moral judgment that looting and rioting is bad because I like nonviolence. So it's like, all right, that's kind of reactionary though. You're just reacting to your gut moral feeling about rioting. But let's look at the broader socioeconomic implications of what's going on and look historically at what has led to rioting, and then let's try and do something about it,
Yeah.
Because obviously we're all nobody wants riots, it's not like we're on the left, like, yay, I love watching everything get burned down.
Yeah.
But it's like, you have to look at what's going into that. And if you just go, oh, I think these rioters are bad, I make a moral judgment against them. Okay, there's going to be another riot in 5 years then, because you're not doing anything to actually change what's going on here.
Yeah. And also there's there's a bunch of videos out there, and I'm actually going to upload this video. Will probably be up on my YouTube channel before this is posted, so check that out. But there's videos out there of the police literally starting the violence. I mean, there's people peacefully protesting, and then the cops will come in with fucking mace and mace somebody, and then all hell will break loose. Like, what do you expect to happen when it's they're teams, they're playing teams right now. I mean, if a member of your team is getting hurt, then everybody else is going to jump in. But
Yeah.
what do you think about the comparisons? I know you've seen the comparisons to the Boston Tea Party, the people who like. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good comparison, but different. It's the Boston Tea Party was more, like I was saying, like an organized effort to target capital of one of these giant companies. And like, I wish these riots had more organization. This is just like MLK said, the anger of unheard people, right? So they've been protesting for years. Nothing's really changed, and they're just, and people are pissed and they're wrecking stuff. But yeah, so I think it's a little different. Like, I wish these were more organized. But I mean, it shows like the backward thinking. People look at the Boston Tea Party as like this great event, get patriotic about it. But then when black people start speaking up, it's like, oh no, I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like it when you do that. And that's another thing is they say, why can't you peacefully protest? Well, they have. It's like, you guys shut that shit down too. I mean, you can't help but to talk about Kaepernick, and I saw that the NFL tweeted something like that we stand with Black Lives Matter and all this crap. But like, no, you don't, because you literally shut that shit down when it was going on. Like, it was your decision, and you shut it down. You said, no, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's just lip service to the black community. That's all that is.
Yeah, and like, who else was big on peacefully protesting? MLK, and his family got a settlement from the FBI because they admitted that they killed him.
Yeah.
Peacefully protesting, it's good. MLK got his civil rights, but it's got its limitations. Especially when you have a state who's shown they're not afraid to use force. They'll kill you, and then the justice system won't hold them accountable. So they have a monopoly on violence, and then as soon as people start fighting back against that in a violent manner, everybody poo-poos it. But
yeah, and there's also the thing that obviously people on the right tend to love the military and everything that it stands for. But like, how can you be telling these people not to be violent when we're literally offensively bombing 8 different countries and we have a 90% civilian drone death rate? So like, talk about this crap. Like, you don't even look at the violence that's going on that you're paying for right now.
Right, because that's not the kind of violence they're into. That's their team doing the violence, so that means it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's so ridiculous. This country is in such a, I don't know, bad place, honestly. But it's good to see, at least, people are getting fed up. And if we get that organization on the ground, if we get these people, I've been messaging anyone who posts anything about this. I'm like, join DSA, join Democratic Socialists of America, join these organizations who are fighting for change on a daily basis, because eventually George Floyd's going to leave the news cycle and everyone will forget about it. So
Yeah. Also, we could get into like our policy too, that like tuition-free college would undoubtedly help the African American community, like in worlds, like you can't even measure how much it would help it, because like the main cause of all this is poverty, right? That's why it's not necessarily that cops target black people because they're evil racists. At least I mean, some of them probably are, but it's that these people are in poverty, and that's who's disproportionately affected, is people who are in poverty. So fuck, I lost my train of thought.
No, I agree. Capitalism is what breeds racism, because if you have this state apparatus who's been purchased by the corporations, and then they're using that state to crack down on the black community and on poor people, like you said, that's what leads to every societal ill, and that's what causes the white dude from my hometown to look at black people and go, oh, they must be racially inferior to me because they're in poverty. It's like, well, look at the legacy of slavery. Look at how much we're putting these people in jail. Look at the resume study that showed you're less likely to get a job if you have a black name. You had to whiten your name in order to get a job. And like, look at the way that this society has put black people in this situation, and then that's what breeds the racism, and then people like Trump come and they thrive off that. Yes, you're right, you are, he doesn't say it explicitly, but like Mexico, Mexico's not sending their best, like, you're right, these immigrants are the reason you're poor, and I'm gonna fix it. And that just fuels a divide. And like you said, Democrats are useless because they're not actually doing anything about it, and they'll address racial issues and they'll pay lip service to it, furthering the divide without actually proposing any solutions.
Yeah, and also that Trump tweet, he said something like, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, or something. That is a direct quote from like a segregationist from Miami, Florida, in the 1960s. That's what he said. And then after he said that, a reporter asked him about it. He's like, I don't know where the quote came from, but I've been saying it a long time, and I really like it, or something like. Dude, you can't just be quoting segregationists when you're the president of the United States.
Oh my god, dude, he's so dumb. But also, I saw a tweet from a conservative saying, imagine looking at the country right now and thinking what we need is Joe Biden. Like, that's just as ridiculous, to be like, let's replace Trump with Biden, then the riots will stop. Like, no.
Yeah, Biden, who told a room full of billionaires nothing will fundamentally change, and also said people don't want a revolution. Yeah, that's gonna stop everything. But like, I love that people act like these people, African Americans, couldn't, like, if you were 50 years ago, they couldn't drink out of the same water fountain as you. So it's just like, recognize that,
recognize the lasting impact that has, and recognize like how far we have to go, to everyone wants to be like, oh, Martin Luther King, you're taught in school, like, here was MLK, and he said black people should be able to poop in the same bathroom as white people, and then now they can, and there's no more racism. Like, that's what you learn in elementary school. It's like, no, MLK was a socialist who said we need to redistribute the wealth, and as soon as he started talking about that, he got killed by the government. Like, we still have never done that, and these communities are still struggling, and yeah, it's not taught in the U.S. education system, of course, which is another issue.
Yeah, and you love it when conservatives or people who are, I guess, the anti-protesting crowd, when they quote MLK, acting like he would have been a conservative nowadays. Like, the dude would have been further left than Bernie Sanders, basically.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So
Malcolm X actually said, if any white person who's not a socialist is like racist, because they're not for actually doing things to change the economy to help these communities. He was even more negative towards the white moderate than MLK was. That Malcolm X was a lot more angry than MLK.
Yeah. So I guess we could talk about like the systematic racism. I mean, we already talked about it quite a bit, but there's some stats that I always like to say to show people that's like, yeah, there is systematic racism. That 20%, if you're white and there's a white and a black guy and both get arrested for the same crime, the black guy will serve 20% longer in prison than the white guy. There, you're 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana, even though if you're black, even though white and black people use the drug at the same rate. So like these are things that are real and that, I mean, like they're measurable. These stats are like, that's insane. You're just because of the color of your skin, you serve a longer prison sentence. Like, just recognize that that's real, so we can actually do something about it.
Yeah, recognize that the study, it's not just like conjecture. It's not like I saw this video of a black guy getting strangled by a cop and I now have these conclusions that the cops are racist. Like, no, this stuff's been measured. They've done studies. More white people do drugs than black people, but more black people are in jail for it, and the resume study, what you were just bringing up with the sentencing disparity. And then I don't know if you've seen the documentary 13th. I would recommend it to anyone, but the way that it works, like, everyone watches TV and they think, like, you get charged with a crime and you go to court and you defend yourself. That's not how it works. Over 90% of cases never go to trial. So, and if you just got to pay parole, which is a way that the private prisons make money. And if you don't have enough money to make bail, then you just sit in jail. And of course, if you don't have enough money to make bail, you're not going to have enough to pay for a lawyer. So even if people are innocent, they just end up accepting it. And there's a story that they tell in the 13th about this kid, Khalif Browder, who fought it. He was like, no, I didn't do what I'm being accused of. And he was in jail for 3 years fighting this. And then they found him innocent. But due to the trauma that he got from being in jail, he committed suicide like a year later, which is, another problem is the recidivism rate. Like, jail is not designed to rehabilitate people. You leave jail and you can't get a job. You can't, and then 76% of people, I think, end up going back. So, I don't know. It just gets back to what we said. Like, it's not that the system's broken. It's that the system is designed to do this, and it's working very well. And now people are pissed about it, and they're rioting.
Yeah. And just imagine supporting the idea that a prison should be for profit. Like, the motive is to literally ruin somebody's life, like quite literally ruin somebody's life just so you can make money. That entire idea, I don't know anybody that could, like, how could you defend that?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people get offended, I guess you would say. A lot of like white poor people, almost stereotypically, but like, because they see people saying, oh, this person's under, this class is under, and like these people, like this African Americans have so many problems, and they're like, yeah, but what about me? Because I have problems too. Like, so that's where we get into maybe nowadays it's not as much of a race divide, which that's still there, don't get me wrong, but it's more of a class divide than anything. And I think a lot of like poor whites, to be honest with you, are that's where racism starts too, because they say, look at these black people, they get grants to go to college just because they're black. What about me? So it's like, we need to overhaul the system, like you said.
Yeah, and that's why universal programs work, right? Because if you do means-tested programs, if you go, all right, we're gonna help black people go to college, we're gonna help fund that, then the white poor people are like, what about me? And then that fuels more racism. It's like, no, make college free for everyone.
Yeah.
Why would we not want the most educated society we could have? It's because people in power don't want that. They don't want you an educated class of workers going to school for free and learning these things. But so it's important to realize that intersection. Like, there's things that black people deal with that us as white people, even though I'm broke, I'm never gonna have to deal with. I'm never gonna have the explicit discrimination based on the color of my skin. But also there's the class, like you said, it's mostly about class. That's where the wealth is. There are plenty of rich black people. I'm sure there's people, black people who own private prisons. It doesn't have to be based on race. I mean, the way we can look at most of the societal divides is based on wealth. But also that's if we can build the solidarity between poor whites and poor blacks, we can change the system. But that's why people in power want to keep us divided, you know, keep us fighting about race, so we won't realize that class divide is what really matters, honestly.
Yeah. And I don't know what your opinion is on reparations, but I mean, in my mind, tuition-free college is reparations, you know,
Yeah.
healthcare for all is reparations. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, Bernie was gonna propose a bill to like study it, you know. But I like universal programs. Like, let's just make it so nobody lives in poverty and nobody has student debt for trying to. Which I found out the other day or yesterday, 2 days ago, I have $82,000 in student debt.
Dude, no
so
way. You serious?
So I don't know. I'm gonna be trapped under that for the rest of my life unless I get really lucky and get some really good job. But yeah, I just think bring everyone out of poverty, you know, like change the way the system works completely so we don't have a giant corporatocracy run by billionaires. I mean, if they'd study reparations and they find out it's a viable thing to do and like they should do it, then go for it. But yeah, like you said, I'm more like universal programs, help everyone out. Nobody should be living in poverty who works, you know?
Yeah. Do you have any last minute thoughts or ideas that you want to hop into?
Not really. I'm really hoping that Nicolas Maduro and Venezuela will see the human rights abuses and they'll come in and they'll overthrow Trump the same way we're trying to do to them. I think that would only be fair.
Dude, you literally just started a controversy and like you just triggered so many people.
It's so stupid though. Like that's what we're apparently trying to overthrow Venezuela for is human rights abuses, and all the reports of that are super sketchy from like these billionaire NATO think tanks, like Human Rights Watch, who has former CIA members sitting on the board, and they're like, "Oh, look at these human rights abuses in Venezuela," as the cops are just strangling people in the streets over here. But yeah, Maduro needs to step in and overthrow the Trump regime.
Here's what I think is that Maduro should just announce that Bernie Sanders is the president, and he can parade Bernie around in Venezuela as the president, like we do.
Yes, Bernie is Guaido, you know.
Exactly.
I made that joke when I was presenting my thesis on Venezuela. So I'm like, we claimed the Venezuelan elections were illegitimate. I wonder if Venezuela was watching the Iowa caucus. You know, like these elections are illegitimate. Bernie Sanders is now president, except Bernie's a lot smarter. Juan Guaido is like a moron. He's such a human being.
Dude, that's hilarious. There's so many parallels to Venezuela and what we need to do.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's about all. I mean, you think that's good?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right.